Hi guys, welcome back to Chess the Matthew. So on this video, we'll tackle on how to beat the London system with the h5 first move of black. So the setup ending start with the move d4, and after h5, our defense to this London system that after, for example, bishop to f4, the significant move to the London system, and here the black was able to play the move a6. It seems like the black here doesn't know how to defend this opening, but after, for example, knight f3, d5, in which the black here tried to regain some control on the center. And for example, after the moves of a3, trying to develop this bishop on e2, d3 square, and here the black was able to play the move e6, in which the black here tries to develop his bishop on his diagonal and also opening some lines for his queen. And for example, after the move bishop to e2, in which the white here will intend to castle as soon as possible, and with his development of his pieces to the good square, it seems the white here is doing fine by having, for example, for white that he can actually now castle on the king side again with his smooth development of his pieces that tries to control the center. But here, for example, after bishop to e2, we simply play the move knight to c6, trying to regain some control on the center and maintaining this diagonal to be open for this queen and bishop. And another thing is to let the white king to castle on the king side. For example, after king side castling for white, then here comes now the bishop to e7 for black. The idea here is to support this g5 push with this queen, because the g5 square here was actually defended twice. So if we have two pieces that actually attacking this square, then we can have a pawn thrust to g5. And here, after, for example, the white here played a move h3, trying to have a loop square for his bishop to the h2, but we simply play the move g5. And for example, after bishop to h2, defending his bishop from the attack of this g5 pawn. And again, there's just a simple g4 attacking the knight on f3. And after, for example, it takes g4, it takes g4, and knight to e5, trying to escape his knight from the attack of this pawn on g4. But after this position, there's just a simple knight takes, and after recapture with t takes e5, here comes now the unprecedented move of bishop to a3. The idea here is to attack the b2 with his bishop on a3 so that he can actually capture soon the rook on a1. And here, after the capture the bishop on a3, but there's just a simple h4. The idea is to have a battery attack on this h file and threatening to mate in one against the white king. And here, after rook e1 for white, here comes now the idea of playing bishop to a3 and a follow-up to queen to h4, because after this move for white, then there's just simple queen takes h2 check, and after king to f1, here comes now the checkmate on h1. So going back to the initial position in which the white here plays the move d4 and the black here simply play the move h5 with bishop f4 to the move to of white, and just play the move a6, and after knight to f3, the black here tries to regain his control on the center with d5. And again, the white here boastfully play the move a3, trying to go with his pit line on the London system. For example, after this move, he can actually now develop his bishop, and after this bishop will be developed to the squares, then he can now castle on the king side as soon as possible. But there is just a tricky line after this position in which the white here played the move e3 that actually blocks his bishop to that control on this diagonal from c1 to h6. And there's just a simple move for black, which is the a6. The idea here is to open up some lines for his queen and for his bishop. And again, for example, after bishop to e2 and knight c6 again, playing first the knight on c6 because it actually controls the center. And after this move, it reveals the idea of this a6 on the move 2, that this bishop can no longer pin this knight against the black's king. So here, after, for example, king castling for white, then here again there is bishop to e7. And the idea of bishop to e7 is to have two defender to this g5 square, so that later on the black can play g5 and tries to harass this bishop on f4. And after, for example, the move h3, in which the idea is to have a loop square for his bishop after the move g5. But we shall see from the latter moves that the white here actually been defeated in just 13 moves, with surprising bishop to a3 with the follow-up of queen to h4. So for example, if the white here plays the move knight b to d2 without knowing that the g5 is coming soon, but it only allows now for black to play the move g5, because we shall see in this position now that this g5 pawn was actually defended twice and just attacked twice, so any exchanges to this g5 will be lost for the aggressive one. And for example, after bishop to e5, there's just simple f6, and we shall see on this position now that if this bishop will retreat, then there is h4. So after f6, the white here may try the move knight takes g5. The idea is after the black here will capture, then the black will lose his rook on h8. But after knight takes on g5, there's just a simple knight takes e5. And for example, after bishop takes h5, there's just a simple king to d7. And after knight takes e6, because for example, if the white here will retreat on the f3, but there's just simple knight takes, and for example, after bishop takes, and still the black here is an extra piece on this position. So going back, for example, after knight takes e5, in which the white here just played the move bishop takes h4 check, and after king d7, and the white here just played the move knight takes e6, because for example, after king takes e6, d takes e5, and d takes e5, we shall see in this position now that still the black here has a 2 pawns for a piece. So going back on this position in which the black here play a simple bishop e7 with a threat to play the move g5, the white here play the move h3, trying to have a loop square for his bishop, because for example, after g5, then the white here can save his bishop to h2. So here after h2, the black here aggressively play the move g4, because after, for example, a takes g4 and h takes g4, the white here play the move knight to e5, trying to escape his knight from the attack of this pawn. But for example, if the white here play the move knight f to d2, but again there is just a simple bishop to a3, with an idea that if the white here will not capture the bishop, then the black here will simply grab this pawn and the rook later on. And here, for example, if the white will just play the move bishop takes to g4, as like I said, the black here will go for bishop takes b2, and after c4 and bishop takes a1. So we shall see in this position now that the black here has an extra rook on h8. So after knight to a5, trying to escape from the attack of this pawn, but there's just a simple knight takes. And after d takes e5, again, the black here play an aggressive move with bishop to a3. Because for example, after knight takes a3, then there is queen to h4 with an h-hack attack on the h-file. So going back, if the white here will simply grab the pawn on g4, and again there is an idea bishop takes b2, and after knight to d2, and again the black here has an extra piece on the board. So after, for example, bishop to a3, in which the white here played the move knight takes a3, and after queen to h4, rook to e1. Although it doesn't help this move to the position that there's a mate in 2 in this position for black. But let's say, for example, if the white here will try another move, which is the f4, trying to have a loop square on this f2 after a capture, and again will put his king into c1 later on. But still, there is just a simple capture for the black. And after queen takes h2 check and king f2, there is again queen to h4, and after g3, there's just simple queen h2 check, and for example, after king to e1, queen takes g3 check, and after king d2, there is rook to h3, trying to have 2 attackers on this d3 pawn with only 1 defender. And let's say, for example, after the king move to c1, the black here will simply play the move knight to h6, and later on will grab this pawn and with an extra pass pawn on the g file. So for example, after queen to e1 on this position, the white here wins in just 14 moves after a capture and king to f1 and queen h1 checkmate. So just a recap, after for example d4, h5, and bishop to f4, a significant move to the London system opening, but we simply play the move a6, and after knight f3, d5, and e3, and again we play first e6 to open up some lines first, so that we can play, for example, after bishop to e2, knight c6 to control the center first, and after allowing the white here to castle on the king side, but there's just a simple bishop 7 and put some tricky lines against the London system here after bishop to e7, because we have a threat here to play the move g5, and after a retreat we have g4, and then after a capture, and after for example knight e5, again there is just a simple capture, and after a recapture there is bishop to a3. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to subscribe.